Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. Each week, we bring you real-life stories and expert insights to help you create a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician with over 2 decades of experience blending Eastern and Western well-being practices. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I'm here to help you reconnect with your own inner radiance. Remember, small changes make a large impact, and it all starts here. Please note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I am so excited today to welcome Dr. Diana Londono to the show. She is a board-certified urologist. She is one of the 10% of urologists in the U.S. who is a woman, and the 0.5% that are Latinx and a woman. Additionally, she is a certified life coach, Reiki master, and founder of physiciancoachsupport.com, a free and confidential one-to-one peer support platform for physicians. She is an international speaker on topics related to wellness, boundaries, ego, humanity and medicine, mindset, and mindfulness. Today, Dr. Londono is going to share a bit of her self-care journey with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just really such a pleasure to connect with your audience and with you, and just really share some things that can hopefully help, others in this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you, first off, for your openness and willingness to come on the show and share a bit of your personal journey with us. So I like to always start these episodes with the same question, which is, can you share with us a time in your life where self-care became no longer an option, but an absolute priority for you? And more importantly, what did that journey look like for you? What sort of tools or modalities or lessons or mindset shift happened at that time?
Yeah, thank you. So for me, it really was burnout number two. We can have one episode or two or three or four until we really learn to change something. If we don't really make something long lasting as, a habit, then you're likely going to go back to the same patterns. So for me, the second time was pretty significant because I had so many physical manifestations of chronic stress, which is burnout. And I think so many of our colleagues who are physicians, but even non-physicians, are in the same place where chronic stress is affecting their own health, their own bodies, and they come in with pains and again with a lot of manifestations of diseases from stress. So I was no different because I had hair falling out, weight loss, grinding my teeth, destroying my teeth, developed asthma at 42, a new onset of asthma at 42 years old, had like chest pain, rheumatoid factor elevated. So this autoimmune sort of was playing out already in my own body because it starts basically attacking your own body. So for me, it was really not so much about self-care, but like what was I paying my attention to and my intention, because everything follows your energy, like whatever you put attention to. So it was really about saying, okay, what am I looking at every day, listening to, consuming, whether it's the news, whether it's people around me, and really making some significant changes. So I really started not looking through Facebook newsfeed because it's just inflammatory and it just makes you feel like the world is ending. So I got rid of all that, which I used to do. I began to just learn more about really what is going on with chronic stress. What are the effects in the body? Because I didn't really learn that at UCLA Medical School. It's a great school, but I did not learn what can happen to trauma when it gets triggered, what happens to chronic stress, what happens in your body. So just trying to understand, and I began, reading a lot, which is something that is really, important for me, and it really is very helpful and calming to learn to read. So just learning into that.
Yeah, I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to pause here just for a bit and reflect on some of what you shared, because you've already shared just so much great information. So thank you for that. First of all, just, with what you emphasized at the very beginning, that it was like burnout number two. And I just want to emphasize that and point that out because on my own personal journey as well, I experienced burnout multiple times. And it wasn't just once, like one and done, like, okay, I experienced it. I learned all there was to learn through that. And, it's never going to happen again. ideally, hopefully that is the case, and certainly I wish for our listeners that they don't have to experience it at all. But for those who have experienced it more than once, just knowing that that's okay in the sense that you're not alone in that. And I like what you shared too. Like sometimes it's, comes to us again to learn something different. Sometimes it's in a different season of our life. Sometimes it's when we are juggling different responsibilities, right? And so I just wanted to emphasize that factor as well. And then how you stated for you, at least the second time around, it presented itself with a lot of physical symptoms. And one thing that I always say is that the body is sending us signals. Our body is always sending us signals. It's just a matter of whether we're listening to them or not. And so often many of us can stay so busy, or we can feel that there's so much that we have to do, that we push down those signals or we ignore them. And we think, okay, if I just keep ignoring the headache, it'll just go away. But rather it ends up intensifying, or whatever that physical manifestation may be. And so just wanted to sort of draw out that nugget as well for our listeners. No matter what you're going through, starting to pay attention to your body and listening to what your body is telling you. And I've also, in addition to Western medicine, I've studied Ayurveda, which is the ancient medical system of India, which really says that if you're experiencing any symptom at all, no matter how mild it is, or whatever aspect of your physical, mental, emotional body it's affecting, if you're experiencing any symptom at all, that means that something is out of alignment. That means that something can be, taken a closer look at. And I really, really love how then you described that you were paying attention to what you were paying attention to, giving your attention and intention to, and what you were consuming, right? And when we think about what we're consuming, and when we think about our physical body, we often think about like the food that we're consuming. But like one of the first things you went to was like the social media feed, right? And realizing that you were consuming, right, all of that information there, and that it just wasn't, you were finding it to be just not helpful. And so that was one of the first things that you stopped. And then also taking time to read and learn more about what was going on in your body. And it sounds like from what you were describing with that, not only did it help you in terms of just understanding what was going on, the effects of chronic stress on your body and trauma, but also it sounds like from the way you were describing it that also you just enjoy reading. So that was just like also another way to sort of switch out almost what you were consuming with the Facebook feed to like reading something that was more enhancing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you say about, Ayurveda. And there's many, modalities, that are not Western that can be, very helpful. And these are all tools that can help us. And I don't think it's one or the other. I'm also a pranic healer, which is a, energy healing. And we definitely believe similarly, that things start usually in the energetic body that later manifest in the physical body. So as you say, something is off balance, something is, blocked, something is not right. So it will start manifesting physically because something is happening, if you believe in like the energetic body. And as physicians, I sort of find it interesting that they don't, because we are energetic bodies. Our heart has a huge electromagnetic field. When we do an EKG, we are measuring energy, potential and signals. It's electrocardiogram. The same thing with EEG. I mean, we're measuring electricity, so we are energetic beings. When our body dies, the energy stops. So it's not something to be afraid of. It's just something maybe to be curious and understand more, because I think it can enhance, our understanding of disease or wellness, or, how to balance things out that, can definitely complement, can definitely enhance and help, in everything we do, whether it's personal or our patient. So I think being curious, being open-minded, learning more about it before we dismiss it, is so important. And I think that goes back to, a curious mind. You cannot be curious if you're in a chronic state of stress, because it's just fight or flight. You're not resting, digesting, being open-minded. And so many of us are, in this chronic stress that everything is, oh no, I'm going to dismiss it. I'm going to say it's terrible. I'm going to yell back. I'm going to say, this is just awful, and not just being open-minded. And I think it's a little bit of a shame, because we lose so much, a growth one, and so much, color to life that we can find if we just stayed a little bit open-minded. So I really do appreciate that, enhancing all those other tools that we have, because I think they can really help us, understand what's going on with us, because it's not all one or the other. And, there's a lot of wisdom in a lot of this.
Before we go on, I'm excited to share something that could make a really positive impact on your life. Are you tired of self-care routines that don't truly nourish your mind and body? Ayurveda offers a holistic approach that honors your individuality and helps restore balance from the inside out. Radiant Self-Care through Ayurveda is a self-paced 4-module video course that introduces you to Ayurveda's ancient science-backed practices to restore balance, boost energy, and renew happiness. From discovering your unique body-mind type to learning daily routines for radiant living, this course offers simple steps that you can take right away to transform your well-being. Head over to radiantlivinginstitute.com to access the course and start your journey to radiance today. I hope you found that helpful, and if you're ready to explore this more, check out the link in the show notes below. Now, let's jump back into today's episode. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, and that's something I always say as well. It's not one or the other, it's a story I think I may have shared on the show before. I'm not sure, but my very first semester of medical school, and this was well over 2 decades ago now, that's when I personally started practicing yoga as well. And that's what really opened up my mind and to the idea that that what I was learning in school was really important, and that there is also additionally so much more to healing and well-being and living healthy lifestyles and self-care and all of that. And I actually wrote on a sheet of paper, East meets West medicine, like on a scrap sheet of paper over 2 decades ago. Because I've always believed that there's a place for both. It's not one or the other. There's a place for all of it, and all of it just gives you different tools and different frameworks, to understand ourselves better, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, all of it. And you're absolutely right. When we're in that chronic stress state that leads to burnout, it is hard to sort of have that curiosity and open mind, right? And that's because we're in that, you had mentioned like the parasympathetic is that more rest, digest, where we are able to cultivate more of that open state. That sympathetic is that more fight or flight, what gets triggered in that chronic stress response. And that can be a very reactive state, very focused in on the problem, on whatever we see as the problem or the quote unquote threat or trigger, right? And so hard to kind of cultivate that and tap into that more sort of open state of attention and state of mind. So for you, you started going back to your journey here, so you started to really look at what you were paying attention to, what you were consuming. You realized that Facebook feed just wasn't helping you at all, so you cut that out. You started reading more about chronic stress, trauma, the effects of that on your body. And then where did that lead you?
Yeah, it really led me to coaching and, understanding the principles of coaching. And coaching is, a lot about awareness. And it really go back to Buddhist principles, but it's about understanding that whatever the circumstance we're looking at is going to give us a thought. And that thought is going to lead to a feeling. From that feeling, we're going to take an action and then get a result. So it's really kind of that simple of how it's going to go. So any action we take comes from that feeling. So again, it came back from a thought. So understanding that starts to give you a little bit of awareness and more mindfulness that, is not just, knee-jerk reaction. Like, we actually are the creators of our reality. We create all the drama that we are living in, swimming in, or sinking in. So understanding that just gives you a little bit of space to be more mindful of how you want to, again, think about things, say things, do things. And that is going to give you a result. So it really started from coaching. But then to me, it wasn't just about like, changing and flipping thoughts and that's going to just make everything better. It really was like, okay, if you're going to have a different way of thinking or feeling, why are you having those, like, what is your basis? What is your groundwork from that? And it really has to come to me was, from a place of love, a purpose, service. And these are actually spiritual, things, spiritual ideas. And then I really then started diving deeper into meditation, and I really just kind of went from there. And then from there I went to like energy, and so I went to become a Reiki master and pranic healer, just understanding like there's different levels of truth and different layers to this onion, honestly. And so that's sort of where it led me. And again, I started doing things I didn't do before. I started being, more intentional about like my thoughts and my actions and what I was feeling and saying. I became, I started doing a gratitude practice, not just because it really does. If you learn about what gratitude does in your brain, your body, and your cells, it is changing your physiology. So just understanding like, you can of course get an antidepressant or anti-anxiety meds, but your body, you can produce it yourself by the things that you think about, by the things you consume. Again, whether it's news media or people around you, what is your environment like? So you can produce all these hormones to make you happy, to make you feel calm. Like, how are you tapping into that state of calmness? So instead of just waking up and being angry and reactive, like how can you cultivate that rest and digest? And it is about finding that quiet time, whether you call it prayer or meditation or journaling or all of them, to really start the day like at a different set point than just the reactive, everything's awful, I have no control over it, I'm just a victim of the circumstances. And really shifting to, you know, this is not happening to me, but for me. What am I learning from this? What can I gain from this perspective? And really start also thinking about like what you want, and especially as women, we can say a lot of what you don't want, which again is just focusing more into that. But we want to focus on like, what do you want? So that all that attention, all that energy, all that brain power can start getting you to that goal. So again, it's shifting all these beliefs, mindsets, priorities, and things that you do on a routine basis every single day. Then it just starts changing how you view everything and how you feel and like what you do. So that was really big changes for me that, I never did before, but it's a practice. And that's why,
Yeah.
if you call it meditation practice, it's a practice because you have to practice every day. Just like medical practice, actually called medical practice because you're practicing every day how to get better at talking to human beings, how to get better at diagnosing, treating, healing, hopefully, So these are all things that every day we kind of incorporate into our daily life. It's not just, okay, this is a terrible day or time. Now I'm going to start meditating or do yoga. Like that's not how it works. It's like you want to do the practice. So when those times come, you are at a good set point of your, frequency to be able to deal with those challenges. And when things are fantastic, well, you're also in a good place, but it's not your rescue place. It is something you do every day to really get you through those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh goodness, I love and I want to reflect on so much of what you just shared there. Um, one thing that I want to just point out to our listeners, what's really interesting is, we are talking about so many different tools and modalities, and you mentioned so many, and I jotted a bunch of them down, so I am going to recap some of those as well. But you mentioned so many different tools and frameworks, and one thing that I always say is how important it is to build our toolbox, right? There's so many wonderful frameworks out there, and coaching and personal development in mindfulness-based practices in Eastern traditions, in, psychology. Like there's just so many beautiful, beautiful tools that we can use, that we can fill our toolbox with. And, what's so interesting is, we're two physicians here speaking, and we've both touched on like some of the science behind all of this, right? And so it's like we were saying earlier, it's not one or the other of sort of Western medicine versus some of these other traditions or tools or modalities. It's like what's really neat and what gets me really excited is learning about the science behind some of these tools, right? Like there is science behind that, like you just mentioned, with gratitude, with meditation, and all of that. Like there is so much science behind all of that and how that affects our physiology. So that's really cool. That's something that I get really excited about, and just wanted to also point that out for our listeners. But some of the things that you mentioned was, really looking at your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and that's really important. And what I'm hearing is like you really went on this journey of doing that work. Like all of that is hard, right? Like all of that is hard to really start examining and kind of taking a step back, or a pause at least, to examine our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, and how they all relate to each other. And then, that led to, looking at what's underneath that, right? Certain values, love, purpose, service, energy. And then looking into meditation and gratitude. So all of these different practices. And, you really went on this journey, what I'm hearing, of really filling your toolbox, and kind of one thing led to another. Like, it's so interesting, and I just bring that up because this is a journey, and it is a practice, as you emphasized there, and it is the work. Like, it's not easy to do this work, to do this inner work, but it is so worthwhile. Uh but one of the reasons that I point that out is for our listeners to just start somewhere, right? Without maybe knowing where that's going to go. Like, that's okay, but just start somewhere. Like, when you start to notice these effects on your physical body, you started with that eliminating the Facebook feed, right? And then that led to like reading more, and then that led to coaching, and then that led to, right? So it was kind of the way you described it. It was almost like one thing led to the next. Like, you just started walking on this path of self-inquiry, and making some changes, and one thing led to the next.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to, when you're trying to make some changes, that you want to add this, but also to realize you gotta let go of a lot of things. Like, you can't keep adding if you don't let go of things. So if you want to add a new routine toolbox, realize and look at the things that you are currently doing, and then think about, like, is this serving me in any helpful way? Because, for example, like, yeah, Facebook was not serving in any helpful way. So I need to let go of that to make room for things that I want to do, like reading things that are uplifting or that I'm learning. So you have to let go. And, if you're looking for, trying to find people in the same sort of frequency or that think similarly, or you're trying to, looking up to them and you want to learn from them, again, you're not going to make room for that if you maybe don't let go of people in like your circle that are like honestly energy vampires and like are dragging you down and are not helpful, they're not supportive. Like, you have to look and sort of do a lot of pruning and let go of things that are just not in the same place you want to be, because you can't like drag all the stuff up there. I mean, like, if you're trying to get to your goal, like, travel light, let go of things that are just weighing you down, and that's going to make the journey just so much better, because you're not like dragging all these things that like no longer fit. And it's sort of like if you are, in your closet, like, let go of all the things you don't like, you don't wear, they don't fit, like looking at yesteryear and thinking those were the glory days. I mean, that's not helpful. Like, start looking at the future, look at your current situation, at your closet, get rid of all the things you don't like love, because and then every time you're in your closet, you're like, I love everything here. Like, what am I going to pick today? Because I feel joyful seeing all the things that I love to wear, not like, this is the, like, oh, this just fit me, but then it doesn't. You go in this negative self-talk about it. That's not helpful. So how are you in your environment, like little things and big things, switching it to make it something that is joyful, that is loving, that is happy? It's so important to look at your desk. Like, what's in your desk? Is it things that you enjoy, or is it a clutter and you feel anxious because it's cluttered? Like, how are you looking at all the aspects of your life, your car even? I mean, is it clean? Is that how you want to have it? To make things just a different energy in a different place where you just feel joyful being around all that. Again, and friends or even sometimes sadly family are just toxic and are not really helpful. I may maybe not like cut them out completely, but like minimize that time around people that are just going to be toxic or not helpful or not supportive. Like, there's just no reason to hang on to these things.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a great point. And such a great point for us to start wrapping up the episode with, right? Because we need to let go to, create space for these new habits that we want to cultivate, or these new routines or thoughts and feelings, and making space for that. And when you were describing that, I imagined like some just carrying this really heavy backpack and just all this luggage while you're like trying to climb up to the peak of a mountain, right? But like, how much easier it is it when you just let some of that go, right? Let some of that weight go, let some of that weight off of your shoulders. And, one of a talk that one of my keynote talks is all about boundaries. And so, and yeah, and, it's one of those parts of self-care that maybe isn't always the most fun, but it is very important. And it is such an important part of that self-care. So I love that. This has been such a wonderful conversation. So many great points that you shared with us today. For anyone who wants to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest is you can go to my website. It's just my name, Diana Londono, MD, like M as in Mary, D as in doctor.com. Or you can find me on social media with the same name or LinkedIn. Usually I do live there most of the time, but anywhere in social media, just find me and I'd be happy to connect if these are things that, you want to talk about, you want to go in further. This really, I can talk about this stuff for hours. It's so important and I'm so passionate about it.
Great, wonderful. And I will include all those links in the show notes below. Thanks again for being here and sharing your journey with us. I know you have so many choices for how to spend your time, so I thank you for being here today with Essential Self-Care. As a gift, download your free workbook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com and start your journey to a more radiant you.